Girl, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Does prosecutor Pam at one point threaten to shoot the TikTokers?
Fuck her. I hate her. Like, I'm not sorry. I heard that. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry.
No.
She sucks.
Okay.
Pam, you suck.
Okay. Hi, Julia Benzavali.
Hello to everyone but Pam. Like, she's going to sit here.
I know.
And say the shit that she said.
I know.
Pam. Like, why? Like, did you think that was a good move? Whatever. We'll get into it. Everyone's like, who the fuck is Pam?
Well, tell them what we're talking about today.
Oh, we're talking about the Menendez brothers on Netflix. Not the shitty Ryan Murphy thing. He's on my fucking list, too. And
whoa, GP look, she's burning it down today,
burning
fam.
it down.
Yeah.
I have a lot of feelings and thoughts.
Well, listen, if you have feelings and thoughts, get in our Facebook group. It's the True Crime Obsessed podcast discussion group. We're at 60,000 members now. And yeah, it's just amazing. It's a great place to go and learn about our book club.
I know, we have a book club.
We have a book club, and whatever, just go. If you want to join the book club, just go into the group and like make a little post that says, I want to join the book club, and they will come and find you.
For listeners, by listeners.
Yes.
Sasha's moderating it. We're having a
like 100 people reading and getting together every month to talk about it. It's so freaking cool. Join the book club. All right, well, we did this out of order. Should we just jump to the trailer?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
My rage just...
No, hey.
You know what? Kathy from Into the Fire said, you stay in that rage. I'm walking through this fire, and I'm going right to Pam. Let's hear about it.
All right.
My name is Eric Menendez. My name is Lyle Menendez, calling you from Donovan Correctional Facility. Lyle was the only person that has ever protected me. What happened that night is very well known, but so much hasn't been told.
If anyone had written this for a script in Hollywood, the Hollywood people would have gone, no way.
The Menendez case is one of the most infamous criminal trials in America. The brothers accused of the murder of their wealthy parents in Beverly Hills.
It was like an incredible soap opera.
Jose was a successful businessman. Kitty was the caring mother. Two boys, emblematic of wealth and privilege. Why would you kill your parents?
As the prosecutor, I knew it was plain old greed.
It was a media spectacle from the beginning. So we were not the ones who told the story of our life. We looked like the perfect family, but behind the walls, something very wrong was happening.
Oh, my God. Well, we opened it Sunday, August 20th, 1989. I forgot this was the 80s. I don't know why I always put this in the 90s.
Because it lasted through the 90s.
Yeah.
Then it ran into OJ. You know, it started in 89, but the trial didn't start for years after.
The mind fuckery of this, I was trying to remember how Kato Kalin played into the Menendez case today.
I never need to see that stupid Hertz commercial again with OJ. He's dead, everyone. Yay. Yay, he's gone.
Oh, my God. This is going to be a good one.
Oh, boy.
Well, we hear the 911 call, and it's awful.
Yeah, so it's Lyle.
I just wanted to say, like, what always surprises me about this 911 call is how shocked the dispatcher sounds. He's like, someone killed my parents. What?
Yeah.
Someone killed my parents? Who?
Yeah.
You know?
This doc is amazing, though, because Eric and Lyle are really telling their stories here. So it kind of like it covers the case, but it also covers everything that's happened over the last 30 years.
Yeah, and Eric and Lyle are on the phone a lot. Like, this was, like, conducted basically over the payphone.
Yeah, we get on-screen text that says this film features excerpts from over 20 hours of exclusive interviews. So Eric is now 51 years old and Lyle is 55.
When Lyle said 55, my jaw hit the floor.
I mean,
they will always be like 18 and 22 to me.
Yeah, and something that really struck me, too, is this last line of the on-screen text. Lyle and Eric have not told their story together in nearly 30 years.
The last time they did was that Barbara Walters interview that we see like 1 second of.
Yeah.
It's insane. And, you know, Eric is saying, like, it's time. This made me so sad for him. He says,
I'm getting older. I'm not going to live that much longer. So much hasn't been told. And I think that not speaking out doesn't help anyone.
Me not speaking out doesn't help anyone.
And especially, I think so many other people have told their story for them. And so now it's time for them to step into that power.
And Lyle is saying, like, the reason we're able to do it now is because all these years later, it's a conversation that people are finally willing to have. This basically comes down to people being willing to believe that men can molest their sons.
Yeah, the people who are late.
Yes.
Like, there are a lot of late people coming to this now.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Let's talk about Beverly Hills, California for 45 minutes about how in the 80s, it was the era of stuff. Greed is good, like that stupid movie.
I do love that Beverly Hills sign. Every time I'm in LA and I see it, I think it's really cool.
Everyone is talking about the most exclusive zip code on earth, 90210.
Yeah.
No one is talking about the television program that made that so.
Right.
We would not be saying.
Yeah, no, you're right.
No one, name another zip code that is famous.
I know.
Oh, wait. Like, no one is talking about.
I know.
Like,
I know.
No one would know the zip code if not for the show.
I know. I got it. Fam, we're in for a good one. She's so bothered.
Don't. And again, we have bigger fish to fry. We have people to like break out of prison. It's fine.
Beverly Hills is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's
but
undeniably
it's like
beautiful.
this kind of thing just doesn't happen in Beverly Hills, which you hear 500 times. That's the point.
I also love when this thing does happen and like the news interviews the neighbor. She's got that weird Madonna. Is she British? Is she?
It's a very affected.
Yes, that's what they all sound like.
I can buy and sell you kind of tone.
Totally.
Which I don't appreciate.
So Sunday, August 20th, 1989, 11:47 p.m., police get a call about a possible shooting. They rush to the scene. They find that 2 people have been like brutally shot and killed in their homes.
And they're very like Beverly Hills people, which is what we're told. Like, Jose Menendez is an executive across the board. He's like a rental car executive with Hertz, a music executive, a movie producer. Like he's just...
They also say there's no clues and no suspects.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like we're going to hear Eric say in just a second, like if they had asked one question or looked in one trunk, they would have found all the evidence they needed.
Yeah, so this was a very bloody crime scene.
I recall distinctly that when the police went into the den where the 2 bodies were, that Jose Menendez's head had been, the back of his skull had been blown off, and while they were there, his brains fell out on the floor.
There was brain matter and blood dripping from the ceiling. Shotguns do horrible damage to a human body.
Jose's brains literally fell out of his head onto the floor during the search. And I
you know what? Fuck him.
Well, but and she says as much. Like I think Pam very much says Jose being dead is like the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah, well, we'll
to the
get
world.
to that because like
we will. I want to try to understand Pam a little bit here. Like I want to understand. I'm just trying to put myself in her shoes.
She doesn't want to understand anybody else. That's very kind of you to want to do that to her because she has no.
The thing about her is she and I use this word knowingly. Like I wouldn't normally like use this word to describe a woman, but like she looks very angry. She looks like she's been living in this case from the second it came across her desk.
Sure.
And she's so mad.
Yeah, imagine how Eric and Lyle feels.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm like, you didn't win, girl, but they did eventually. You know what I mean?
And you're still here with not an ounce of growth or understanding or warmth at all. You can be angry and you can be like, stop.
Yeah. And she says the only reason she's here is for Kitty. She says she's here because like she was treated by a doormat by her husband, slaughtered by her kids. She says she's doing this for Kitty.
Yeah. So let's get back to the scene.
Sorry.
We'll dive into Pam.
Yeah. I could talk about it for 29 hours.
Well, we will. So these 2, Jose and Kitty Menendez, were killed with shotguns at close range, which, as we know, causes a ton of damage.
They say that like shotguns, like it's brutal what they do to the human body.
Yeah. No shells at the scene. So like, where did the shells go? Someone must have taken them.
Yeah.
Eric and Lyle were 19 and 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And the brothers at the time say, well, we went to the movies and we came home and we found the bodies and then came upon this scene, which is where Pam, the prosecutor, takes her first jab at them saying, the boys were hysterical. They were overacting.
Yeah.
The cops were too nice to them. Were the cops too nice to them?
All
of
of that is true, by the way.
Right.
And I'm not like here to defend Pam, but like they were overreacting. The cops were too nice.
But I do think they were realistically hysterical. No one, it's not like they were like, let's do something crazy and diabolical and kill our parents. They thought they were going to die.
Well, yes, I agree with that. But I mean, we are going to hear them talking about what their life was like in the days after, how they were just in a fog and they were, you know what I mean? I do think we see a new side of Eric in all of this. Like he's going to say later, he regretted it 10 seconds later. He was a fucking wreck every minute since.
Because that's what happens when you're groomed and abused.
Yes. But this is where Eric says there should have been a police response. He's like, we had no alibi. They said they went to the movies, but they had no ticket stubs.
We had no alibi. The gunpowder residue was all over our hands. Under normal circumstances, they give you a gunpowder residue test. We would have been arrested immediately. There were gun shells in my car. My car was inside the search area. All they had to do was search my car. They were searching everything.
you know those shells everyone was looking for? They were in my car, which was inside the search area. If they would have asked me a single question, I would have crumbled into a million pieces. I would have told them everything then and there.
But then Pam, the prosecutor, says, like, Beverly Hills is a different kind of police department. And she takes a second to think about it. And she's like, they have a much better customer service for their citizens.
Well, and because what kind of citizens are they?
Well, that's what
we
she's
just
saying.
Got 15 minutes of how rich it is.
Yeah, you don't want to like piss off you know what I mean?
And
like,
no one mentions Kelly Taylor. I can't.
I know.
Like Jenny Garth. Hi.
Andrea Zuckerman, like, please. You know
Andrea.
what I mean? Donna Martin graduates.
Oh, remember Donna Martin? So by 4 a.m., the boys are questioned.
Yeah.
And here's what they say happened. When they were questioned at 4 a.m., they're saying they came in, the TV was on, so they went into the living room. They say, no, the TV wasn't on that loud. The cops are like, the TV was on super loud.
Yeah. And, you know, we're getting Eric sort of talking us through this moment, too, because he's kind of saying that, like, we were giving them every indication that, like, our story didn't make any sense. We did it. It was right there.
They walked, because they say to the cops then, we walked in and we saw all this like yellow haze thanks to the shotgun. You only would have seen that if you actually did the murders. Like, they're just like, we should have been arrested. It was very obvious that we did it.
Yeah. We are going to get people saying that, like, everyone thinks that the cops here were so stupid. They weren't looking at the boys at all. And they're saying behind the scenes, they totally thought the guys did it, but they just didn't have any evidence and couldn't let on that they thought that they did it.
Yeah.
You know?
So October 22nd, 1989, 2 months later, we meet this guy, Robert, who's a writer, and he meets with the brothers, and they're wearing like those famous like tennis outfits, and they're like laughing and joking.
I want to know more about how, like, so he's a writer writing about the case, and I guess Lyle invited him over to the house to talk about writing something together.
Because Lyle wants help writing a book about their father.
Yes.
Because he says, like, even today, he's like, I was just telling the legend. Like, I wanted to keep up the stories. Like, I found safety in sort of telling people that my father was exactly who they thought he was, the great guy that they thought he was. So that's how this author came onto the scene. And they were like free, air quotes, but they were lost because they just committed a brutal double murder. And their home life, as shitty as it was, and it was the shittiest you can imagine, it was all they knew.
Right.
So like, they're kind of like, okay, we're not being abused anymore, but now we have to deal with this other mess that we've created because they thought they only had to make a mess to get out of it.
Right.
And now they're here and they're like, shit, we didn't think very far ahead.
But I think that goes to them really feeling like their lives were in danger because they didn't have a plan to get away with it.
And once they're out of the chaos, they're kind of like, well, what do I do? Like, it's all they know.
And that shows you how bad it was because all they knew in the moment was to get out of the pain they were currently in by any means necessary.
And now they have to lie about killing them.
Yes.
So on top of all of the shit, what it means to have to kill your abusers.
Yes.
Now you have to act like you didn't do that.
And like Eric is talking about, the family's coming to town and everyone's crying. He's like, I can't imagine having to tell the family that we had done this.
And why? It's the why of it.
Why.
Because, and then add of all the, like, just the Pandora's box of what's going to be opened up if they started telling the truth.
Yes.
But we'll learn they've been telling the truth to people in their family for a long time.
Yeah. And so, you know, now they're saying that Eric and Lyle were handling the death of the parents really differently.
Eric dropped plans to enter UCLA and hired a $50,000 a year tennis coach to help him turn pro.
Lyle bought a Porsche, expensive clothes, and a restaurant near the family's former home in Princeton, New Jersey.
Hiring bodyguards and buying restaurants. Can we slow down on this for 1 second?
Yeah, Chuck's Spring Street Cafe. I looked into it.
Why on earth? So as a person who worked in restaurants for nearly 20 years, I cannot imagine a more horrifying thing to do with my life than buy and operate a restaurant.
I'm going to make some big assumptions here. Okay. So Lyle, like, please correct me, but Lyle was 22.
Yeah.
And he had gone to Princeton. So he was in Princeton, New Jersey. So this restaurant in New Jersey is Chuck's Spring Street Cafe. It's a wing joint. And so Lyle bought it and wanted to call it Mr. Buffalo's and turn it into a franchise. And that never happened. It is actually still Chuck's Cafe in Princeton.
To this day,
you can go and order food. Like, it's still
way.
there. So, but I think what happened for Lyle is just like, it's far away from Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
It is kind of like this life he had when he was in college. I think it's just sort of trying to, he's not going to run the restaurant. Right. He doesn't give a shit about that. But it's like a connection to, it's like a home base far away.
Yeah.
And to like the Lyle that he could be when he was away at college.
It's just like, we've heard for decades about the Rolexes and the Porsches. No one's mentioned the restaurant until now.
He was going to call it Mr. Buffalo's and franchise it.
Good for you, Lyle.
You know what? I
Thinking
love it.
big, you know?
But also, yes, all the luxuries, too, that you can think of.
Yeah.
Like, Eric had ditched his college plans, hired a $50,000 a year tennis coach. He wanted to go pro.
But I mean, I think that was like not a lofty goal. Like, I think he could have.
These are people who grew up playing tennis. They had a tennis court in their house. Like, it's not that far-fetched.
Yeah. And Pam is saying, like, they started spending money as though they had been desperate for it.
Well, now, but today, they're like...
The idea that I was having a good time is absurd. Everything was to cover up this horrible pain of not wanting to be alive.
It was all an act. They were
Yes.
miserable. They were suicidal. They still, even then, didn't want to let their father down. So they were keeping up appearances, which is what he always forced them to do.
Yes, I'm trying so hard to remember this time. Like, in 1989, I would have been like 11 or 12. So I'm trying to remember, like, were there like camera crews following them everywhere, like on their like Rodeo Drive shopping sprees, or did we learn about all of this later?
I'm sure later.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, maybe a little bit of both, but I mean, there was no 24-hour news cycle. This didn't make it around the country yet. This was still
like a local
like the
story.
trial was televised and that's when it exploded. But like spending all this money made them a target for the cops because they're thinking, is it the motive? And I'm like, but they were in the lap of luxury anyway. It's not like they were waiting for this big inheritance. They had everything they wanted.
It's kind of like Pam describes the spending as alarming. And I'm like, well, if you look at it through a different lens, can't we see that like it's a cry for help?
Yeah.
Can't we see like they're them acting out in this way after their parents are dead and after we now know that they've killed them? Like, they don't know what to do.
And we just got 15 minutes of how Beverly Hills greed is good in the 80s. And so they're, they're just...
But I mean, it was really going to paint a picture at the time of these like bratty kids who just wanted their parents' money.
Right. So the cops find out...
They found the place where they bought the guns using Lyle Menendez's roommate's stolen ID card.
Can you imagine being that roommate who finds, like, oh my God.
And like,
now suddenly you're involved in this?
know.
Like, holy shit.
Oh my God.
But, Pam says that before that happened, they had been looking for ways to, like, connect the murders to the boys.
Yeah.
This is the thing that says, like, Pam's like, all right, now we've got a case that's ready to go.
So by March 8th, 1990, 7 months later, the brothers are arrested. And the motive is money, this $14 million inheritance.
Yeah.
And Lyle today says, this arrest was totally staged to encourage a media circus.
Yes.
Like, the cops called the media. They made a scene. Eric was overseas. He flies home to surrender.
The first one to report on it is Kathy Griffin for MTV News.
Oh my God. And like, it's like instantly a worldwide story. Like these two rich brats killed their perfect parents just to get the money.
Yes.
That was the narrative on March 8th, 1990.
And like initially, Lyle is telling the family, like, this is all a big misunderstanding. We're totally innocent. We don't know what anybody is talking about.
And the family's like, of course you didn't kill them.
Of course, yeah.
June 14th, 1993, 3 years and 3 months later, jury selection starts. So we're diving right into the trial.
We meet jurors Judy and Hazel. I am obsessed with Hazel. Hazel, if you are listening to this, my DMs are open. I would like to be best
They're
friends.
Great.
Yeah.
Media circus does not even begin to explain what was going on at this trial. But Betty's here too. Betty's a juror. Betty's like, I knew everything and everything. They told me not to read everything. I read everything.
I read everything. And Hazel is just like, I had heard rumors when I was there for selection that it might be the... She does not understand that the wheels of justice work slowly. Because she's like, wasn't the Menendez thing like 3 years ago? And then all of a sudden Eric has walked into the room.
I'm like, 3 years and 3 months actually.
Right, exactly. But who's counting?
Right. This is one of the first televised trials ever.
Yeah.
And let's meet some of the lawyers. So Leslie Abramson is representing Eric.
We wondered what drives this tiny, brash, brainy woman with the in-your-face style.
This 4'11" Little Orphan Annie lookalike is 104 pounds of pure dynamite.
It's 104 pounds of pure dynamite.
Wait.
Number one, can we not? Number two, Little Orphan Annie is famously a redhead.
Famously a redhead. My favorite line in the entire documentary, her trademark audacity has helped save dozens of people from death row.
How dare...
Her trademark audacity.
How dare a woman show up to work and do her job?
I know.
mean, the nerve.
I want like a mug that says my trademark audacity.
I mean... But they never say that about a man.
I know. Oh my God.
Little Orphan Annie And he's a redhead, dummies. God.
You are so offended by like the hair coloring of a musical. I love that.
I just think it's ridiculous. This 4'11". It doesn't matter her height either. Like, just it's so.
It doesn't,
disgusting.
and it's like it's kind of fun to see her back in the day, like in the beginning of the trial, looking all sassy and confident, and like we know what's going to go down with her. They don't get into her.
They don't get into it at all.
There's a whole thing where she like tampered with evidence.
Yeah, we'll get to
it. Do we? Because they don't.
I will.
Okay, good.
Do you think I didn't go back to my notes from when we did this?
It must be nice to be able to access your old notes.
It's wonderful.
I can't imagine
do it all the time.
Where any of mine are.
That's insane.
I know.
So Pamela, the prosecutor, hates Leslie Abramson. And she goes,
if I told you what I really thought of Leslie Abramson, I would be sued. Because she, I think, has lost all her money. And I'm not giving up my house.
Actually, she lost all her money, right?
Yeah, well, that's why she doesn't. That's why she's saying she's going to get sued. She's lost all of her money, and I'm not going to lose my house.
Yeah, so Pamela, Pamela is trying real hard to just like land zinger after zinger, and she just ends up looking like a fucking asshole. Like, Pamela, it doesn't land.
I know.
It's not landing.
Well, for me, it lands, but it like. The job of a prosecutor is very hard. You know what I mean? And it's like the job of the defense is hard, and it's just like, you know, I believe that Pam got out of bed every day to be like, I'm going to go be an asshole and do bad things in the world. Like, I don't think so. But it's like,
she did when she woke up on filming today.
I know.
Here's my thing. Not all prosecutors. I understand. I totally get it. It's a hard job it's all a hard job. Everyone has fucking hard jobs. Like, enough. But we're sitting here reflecting. Decades later, Eric and Lyle are here to tell their story, and she's not going to say anything along the lines of what you're saying, which is, look, here's my job at the time. Here's the information I had. Here's what we all believed, and I did my job to the best of my ability. But what she says is, today, she goes, well, I didn't feel like pure evil from them. Like, I saw them as potted plants, like poisonous potted plants. They were just these dumb jock killers. Now, I was sort of, because I'm like, wait a second, is she doubling down? Like, has she not learned anything?
She's for sure doubling down. She thinks they made the whole thing up.
Because I didn't know at first.
Yeah.
I was like, I will say she has a very cute dog. None of this is the dog's fault.
Right.
Dog, I'm not talking to you. Sometimes good dogs happen to bad people. It happens all the time. But I was like, oh, is she doing that thing where she's talking the way she was thinking back then out of context now? And then we'll hear like, but listener, pull over or whatever. But because I'm going to tell you right now, she thinks they made it all up.
100%.
She doesn't believe them. There is so that's the thing that makes me crazy.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Because if she said, look, now knowing what I know, it pains me to say, but I'm going to be honest with you, like, here's the truth. But back then, this is why I acted the way I did, it would be totally different.
And it's wild because it's like, you know, ultimately, and this is not a spoiler, her case ends in a hung jury. And I think that she has talked herself into believing this story.
Yeah.
You know?
And I guess maybe you have to, but like, do you have to be so smug on camera about it?
Why are you here? Why, like, you know, she's saying she's here for Kitty, but like she really is blowing off some steam.
So,
you know?
like, and just the selective belief.
Yeah.
So he abused Kitty, but not the kids? And did Kitty, like, what was Kitty's role in the abuse? Like, how you can't pick and choose. And then be a smug asshole about it. We're not doing that today. Or ever.
Well, we also learned that it's the same judge from the Rodney King case 13 months earlier.
Stanley.
Who, honestly, when we see shots of him in, like, now from the Menendez trial, he looks bored to death. Bored to death.
So, obviously, the Rodney King case did not go well for this guy.
Right.
So, this was motive, though, for a lot of people. Like, the Rodney King case was a mess, and a lot of people wanted to, like, prove the credibility of the legal system in Los Angeles, and they were going to use the Menendez brothers to do it.
Yes.
So the prosecution gets up there. They killed their parents for money. It was totally premeditated. They are rich, dumb jocks. Look at them. They're so smug. They're so rich. They're just brats. They wanted their money.
Yeah.
That's the vibe of the prosecution. The defense is... yes, the brothers killed their parents. No one is denying that Eric and Lyle killed their parents, but the defense is going to tell you why.
Yes.
And the defense is saying...
the origin of this killing was a lifetime of abuse at the hands of those same parents. He killed his parents because he could no longer endure their abuse and had to stop it.
The defense is saying it is out of fear. They are terrified of both of their parents. It was a lot of violence. Jose was beating them.
They say he reveled in his sadism.
Yeah, he would hold them underwater.
I've heard that story 100 times, and every time I hear it, I lose my breath.
It's horrible. He was violent to everyone, including Kitty, their mother. You never knew who was going to get hurt or why. You're just walking on eggshells. It's a horrible way to live.
But then also, Kitty was a total mess. She'd found out that Jose was having an affair for 8 years. She was leaving suicide notes, threatening to poison the family. This is the environment the brothers were living in.
So that was 1986 when Kitty learned that her husband was having an affair, leaving suicide notes. That was 1986. So then at least 3 years of a life like that, we get to 1989 when they're murdered.
Well, and also that's the whole thing too, where it's Kitty, we know she was drinking a lot and doing other substances. We know that she knew about the abuse and was just absolutely never going to do anything about it because she was such a broken individual.
And the threats to poison the family, the defense is saying this is a woman who would absolutely kill her children, and she said as much.
Yes.
So
yes, exactly.
This is the home the brothers were living in, and that's the defense.
Right.
Because they suffered a lifetime of abuse, physical, emotional, psychological. That's all the defense is saying right now. Because right now, that's all the defense knows.
Because they're saying that killing the parents was the only way out of the abuse that they were suffering.
And just to make this point clear, at this time, the defense is saying physical, emotional, psychological abuse because they don't know about the sexual abuse just yet.
Yes.
But to me, they still have a very strong case for abuse and the brothers being in fear of their lives without the sexual abuse. But right now, they don't even know about it.
Yes, agreed 100%. So we get the Menendez backstory. We're going to Cuba in 1944. Jose Menendez was raised in Havana. The Menendez family were all the elites. They were doctors, lawyers, rich people.
My father was born into a wealthy family, but lost everything through the revolution and fleeing Cuba, and then rebuilt it in America. They came to America penniless. Everything had to be left behind.
They say they came to America penniless, and they had to rebuild from scratch as refugees in a foreign country.
Now, that idea, if it wasn't Jose Menendez, is incredibly commendable.
Yes.
It's an
100%.
amazing it's a dream. It's
and the more they describe him, Eric is saying his dad had this unwavering drive and belief in himself that people were either afraid of or pulled in by, and my mom was pulled in by it.
Right. So Jose Menendez back in Cuba, they came. Eric describes it as this prestigious bloodline going all the way back to Spain.
And these videos of Cuba back in the 50s or whatever,
gorgeous.
absolutely
that
stunning.
Aesthetic is
I know. I'm dying to go there now that we can again.
Beautiful.
I think we still can.
Yeah, I don't. What's today?
Everything's up in the air. We don't know anything.
So yeah, he came from this very prestigious history, and now Kitty is white and she's from this middle American family.
Yeah.
But she's described as exotic, she was a pageant girl.
Yes.
And she was in fashion shows.
She looks like Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Yeah, she wanted to be a performer, radio, theater, whatever. She just wanted a career in show business.
Did you like my super gay Zsa Zsa Gabor reference? What was that?
Just that you mentioned her?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think this is the first time Zsa Zsa Gabor has ever been mentioned on True Crime Obsessed podcast.
Can you imagine?
Pretty gay.
Lie. Now, Kitty wanted this successful career, but we learned that wasn't going to happen because Jose is the man and only he can be successful.
Right.
Cool.
They're saying that the coming together of these families, it was this incredibly machismo Latin family intermingling with this incredibly white middle American family.
Yeah, just stupid.
Yeah.
Jose had a ton of businesses. He ran Hertz, that stupid OJ commercial.
I know. And Lyle talks about OJ would come over and throw the football around with us in the yard. When they run into each other in prison, fancy meeting you here.
But and the point is that was the circle they ran in.
Yes.
Right. So so that also leads to they had everything. And again, this is before OJ murdered Nicole Brown Simpson.
Right.
And Ron Goldman.
Yes.
So at this point, everyone's oh my God, you're friends with OJ? There was a time, children.
When that was a good thing.
And that's why they got OJ to be in a Hertz, a rental car commercial.
Yeah.
And then he became the head of RCA Records, directing the lives of very significant stars at the time. Hall & Oates, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton. He helped create him and Menudo.
Also, he helped create Menudo. And Menudo is one of the first, quote, boy bands and one of the most successful groups ever.
Yeah.
Really super significant in terms of crossover audiences. And Ricky Martin was in this group.
Yes,
that's how he started.
But you get kicked out when you're 15 and they replace you with a 12-year-old.
Yeah. And there is a lot of, he absolutely abused at least one of those boys.
Yes. There's a whole documentary about it. I was reading an article about it today.
Yeah. His name is Roy. He's spoken about it at length. And the theory is that Jose Menendez was doing this to a lot of young boys in his life.
Yes.
Because Eric today makes a good point saying, we had the money.
Right.
We were the only people getting that inheritance eventually. We were in our 20s.
We wouldn't have done this for the money. We were getting it. And we had it, A, and B, we were going to get it when they died.
The murders happened because something awful was happening inside that house.
Yes.
And we still, at this point, don't know exactly what it is.
Back to the trial. Hey, everyone, get ready to meet Dr. Oziel.
Boo. Go stand in the corner with Pam and think about what you did.
And while you're over there, can you do something with your hair? Like anything with your hair.
I don't even care.
I know. Wait till we meet Judalon. We're just starting with Oziel.
Oh my God. So, okay. When Eric was young, he was involved in a burglary.
Yes.
And he was sent to a therapist, and that therapist was Dr., in air quotes, Oziel. And Eric started seeing him again after the murders because he was the only therapist he knew.
Yeah. So Dr. Oziel is describing that Eric comes to see him. He's all upset, agitated. He asks Dr. Oziel to go out for a walk, which I go to my therapist every week. I can't imagine being like, Jeff, can we go for a walk? I can't imagine that.
No.
But it's almost as though he was anticipating recording devices or something in the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's when he's outside with Dr. Oziel that he tells Dr. Oziel that they did it, that they killed the parents.
And he explains why, to a point, because Eric tells the therapist about Jose was domineering, controlling, these impossible standards, super violent. All of this was also happening to their mother. She was also miserable. And Eric today says, I wanted to kill myself. I had to confess. I needed to talk to somebody, anybody, and this guy was all we knew. And so this doctor does the most messed up shit ever. And he's like, Eric, interesting. It said no warmth, no empathy, no okay, let's have a plan so we can help you work through this. What he does is he gets Lyle to come in, and then he's like, you two boys, tell me, just say directly into the microphone very loudly that you killed your parents. He records them.
And in front of their faces. He puts down the recorder and lets them know that he's recording.
Yeah,
them.
say very loudly into the mic what you did and how you killed your parents. And Lyle today uses the word blackmail.
Right, because Lyle is saying the only reason Dr. Oziel is in our life is because when Eric was sent to a therapist after the burglary,
my father refused to hire Dr. Oziel unless he signed a document saying that everything that Eric told him he would relay to my father. And Dr. Oziel signed a document to that effect. My father chose this sleazy psychologist because it was the only psychologist who'd be willing to waive confidentiality so his son couldn't actually confide in the doctor.
So Dr. Oziel went along with that.
And he was the only therapist in town who would
do it, yeah.
Which means he's super sleazy, and he's he was waiving confidentiality. For what? How much was this asshole paying you?
And you can't, waiving confidentiality isn't a thing that you're allowed to do.
And
you know what I mean?
Isn't that a major red flag?
Yes. I mean, what a piece of shit. We're just getting started.
What a piece of shit.
This guy is the worst because Prosecutor Pam is saying, so he gets the confession from Lyle and Eric, and then Prosecutor Pam is then he told his wife and his girlfriend.
Well, his girlfriend, who was also a former patient, and his secretary.
Yes.
So he was asking her to listen in on sessions with the brothers. There are 10 unethical things in that sentence.
Her name is Judalon Smith.
Judalon Smith.
Which, Judalon, what a name. So Judalon Smith, the girlfriend / former patient /
employee
goes to the cops because according to Judalon, she was kidnapped by Dr. Oziel, held against her will and raped by him. So she goes to the cops to report that. And as an aside, was this guy's kind of important. For example, he works with the Menendez brothers, and they totally admitted to him that they killed their parents.
Yeah, and the reason I know this is because he recorded them and then would have me eavesdrop on sessions.
Yeah.
Now, in the middle of all this, obviously this guy's about to lose his license.
Right.
Clearly, it's about fucking time.
Yes.
But Pamela, the prosecutor, calls the attorney general, and she's like,
Hi.
Can you hold off for a few weeks? Because I really want to call this total full of shit scumbag to the stand as a witness for my case. Can you not suspend his license?
Do you mind?
If you suspend his license,
let him keep treating people indefinitely.
That's when he'll really lose credibility. Not the 10 unethical things.
Right.
He did at once.
And Pam only puts him on the stand so she can get the tapes because she needs these confession tapes to play for the jury.
Yeah, and she had to fight to get the tapes, and she gets them, but not until the very, very end of the trial.
Yeah.
So now another time jump. It's June 1990. We're going back in time 3 years before the trial.
There's weird scuttlebutt that Eric and Lyle both tried to escape from prison one morning. This story makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
These two young, preppy rich kids are going to try to escape from prison.
I mean...
Are you kidding me?
From one prison to another.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
But because there's been this scuttlebutt that they were trying to escape, the prison is now allowed to search their cells.
Right. So they're in custody in the county jail. They're in the same place, but on different floors.
Yes. Eric is in like the celebrity wing. We'll get to that later.
So Lyle writes Eric a letter talking about the murders.
Yeah.
And he wrote like, please destroy on the back of the letter. It's 17 pages long and it's a confession, but it's also kind of an explanation. There are no real details.
Yeah.
But it's clear that they experienced some very horrible things.
He felt that telling the 6 secrets of the family would be like killing my parents again. And he did not want to do it.
The essence of the letter is like, we had to do this, but we don't want to tell exactly why because it'll ruin the family. It'll ruin our reputation. It would be like we were killing our parents again.
Right. So when they search the cell, they find this letter, and this is the evidence that the brothers did it. And the thing that I had to keep reminding myself, because we're so many decades later and we all know the case so well, there was no real evidence that they did it.
No,
they
zero.
didn't have the tapes from Dr. Oziel. They didn't find any evidence at the scene. There's no, like, they didn't do the gun residue. They didn't find the shells.
It was there. The gunshot residue was there, but they had washed their hands,
Right. So, like, at this point, I guess they found the store where they bought the guns, but they never found the guns. They never found any sort of confession. This is a full-on confession.
And this, to me, is such proof that, like, they were in fear of their lives. They were abused all the time because they could have easily gotten away with this.
Yeah.
And they're like rich kids from Beverly Hills.
I mean,
did we not just do affluenza?
Right, exactly. I mean, the thing about it is that, like, Eric either would have turned himself in or I think died by suicide. I don't think if they hadn't gotten caught, I don't think Eric could have survived with the guilt that he was feeling.
So Eric didn't destroy the letter because it meant a lot to him. He's explaining, and I totally understand it. It's like, it's a connection he has to his brother. It's proof that what they went through was real. It's some kind of like validation for their experience.
Yeah.
So even though Lyle wrote please destroy because he knew the weight of it, Eric, and I completely understand why, wanted to keep it. It was important to him. So the letter was found and the secrets are out a little bit. So in 1990, 3 years before the trial, everyone knows that Eric and Lyle did this and they have to face their family. The whole world knows. And so Leslie Abramson, who's Eric's lawyer, is the one who's pushing them to be honest.
It was just very tragic for me personally that something I was doing to try to keep a secret from coming out was the reason that my brother then said, and Leslie, well, now you have to. Your obsession with keeping this thing secret caused you to write this thing that the prosecution has got their hands on, and now you have to tell why.
Leslie Abramson is like, something terrible happened. You're not saying why. I want to help you.
Yes.
So she brings in Dr. William Vickery, who's for the defense. And Leslie Abramson is like, girl, you have to help me. Something has to be going on, and they're not saying why.
And Vickery is like, Eric was a mess. Like, I could not get him to, like, stay on a train of thought. All he would do for hours and hours was cry about what a great man his father was.
And Dr. Vickery's like, great, then why'd you kill him?
Right.
If he was so wonderful.
Right.
But also, of course, the brothers aren't going to speak because they think it's Dr. Oziel all over again. They're not even over that betrayal.
Yeah, of course.
That was years long. So, of course they're not talking.
The other thing, too, that we have to remember is that the keeping the secret about the sexual abuse wasn't just about not tarnishing the family name. For young men to acknowledge sexual abuse is incredibly painful for anybody, of course. I mean that, but just because we're talking about young men is why I said it that way. But, like, they haven't even really admitted it to themselves.
That's it.
You know?
So they're trying to get to the bottom of, they know something horrible happened. It's been inferred. But what is it? Because if you are honest with us, we can help you. Of course, they don't want to be honest because they don't trust anybody. And why would they?
Yes.
But now Dr. Vickery is also talking to some family members.
Right.
And this is where we meet Diane. She's their cousin. Kitty is her aunt.
Yes.
Now, Diane and Eric and Lyle had a very strong bond. They were like the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
And Diane says the only time they ever had fun is when they were alone. Like when they weren't by the adults.
The three of them together, yeah.
Now, Diane is a witness to the abuse. She saw Jose. This is so horrifying.
I know. And I want to know how old. I'm imagining Lyle was 5 in this story.
Baby, small. And so much of this is horrifying. But like for someone to witness this happen to your cousin who you love so much.
Yeah.
One time, Jose put Lyle on a kitchen counter and prompted Lyle to jump off, and he was going to catch him. As Lyle did so, Jose backed off and let him fall to the ground, telling him that you can never trust anybody.
See that? You can't trust anybody.
Like, what a sociopathic piece of fucking shit you have to be.
And you know he got like a chuckle out of it.
Yeah.
Like my stupid idiot 4-year-old fell for this.
And you know he walked out of the room while the kid is screaming and crying and probably bleeding.
Get up. No one's going to help you up off the floor when you're crying in the real world.
Exactly.
That's the vibe.
Oh, God.
Because you know
this
what?
is the kind of father shit I'm talking about. This is why I'm terrified of dads.
Because what he's saying is, don't you see what I went through? I came from everything in Cuba and I lost it. And now look at how you live. You think I got that by letting people walk all over me and fucking cry?
My God.
That is the attitude that Jose, but very violently.
When it lives inside you to treat children that way, like what a fucking psychopath.
Right. So Diane, the cousin, is like, oh my God, she sees this.
Yeah.
And now other family members are on the stand testifying to the violence. And this is that thing, like what we always say, if it's happening in public, what are they doing in private?
Yeah.
Because it's a carousel of people.
I think we know it's like 59 witnesses, I think is the number.
57 eventually. But the family members are like, I saw Jose punch with a closed fist. The boys always look terrified. Someone asked, did he hit him hard? Witness, yes, he did.
He was
Lyle
5.
Was 5.
Yes.
So all of the family members are saying what a piece of shit Jose is.
They're testifying for the brothers.
Right.
Yeah.
And now Pam, the prosecutor, this is when she says, and this is what made my head spin, because she says, not a single person had anything nice to say about Jose Menendez. The loss of Jose Menendez, in my mind, was an actual plus for mankind. He's a really awful man. And I'm like, oh, this must be the point in the documentary where she says, and now I have learned. But she says, and I was like, what? She continues, she goes, and more proof he's awful? He raised sons capable of murder. So there you go. And I'm like, oh, you had me in that first little bit, Pam.
And because the whole idea, we say this all the time, like one of the reasons we think they should be let out of prison is because they are not a danger to anybody else. I don't think Pam thinks that. And I'm not excusing her. I'm just saying in her brain, they are murderers. If they are capable of murdering them, they are capable of murdering anybody, and they got to stay where they are.
She lives in a very binary world.
Yes, 100%.
And maybe you have to in her line of work. I don't know. But I think it was a choice and a half to come here after everything we've learned about not just abuse, stigma, the prison system, like so much of it and she's going to sit here and be like, they're fucking rich, dumb jocks. Like,
I know.
Today?
With no self-reflection. You know what I mean?
Like, we're like 2 years into the Eras tour and you're still talking this kind of shit. We don't do that anymore. My God. So, and then we learn I really thought this was interesting and really important to talk about, like, just the real inner workings of this kind of abuse that has on people when you're surrounded by it. So, like, Jose was competitive and mean, and then he would instill it in his sons. So, like, Eric would try to emulate him just to protect himself. He'd be mean also.
Yes.
And, like, that's just, we talk about the cycle of abuse, and that's an example. Like, they would try to be the favorite son to avoid abuse, and then how do you impress a guy like Jose? You're mean and you're cruel.
And this is like how bullies are created. Like, and think about your high school bully. He probably had a dad just like Jose Menendez.
Right. And if he did, I'm not saying like, I'm just saying like that's the cycle of abuse of like to protect for self-preservation.
Yeah.
You turn into a mean, cruel person.
Yeah. I mean, and like further to that point.
In this instance, I'm saying.
Yeah. Eric is talking about how
he loved us, but he believed that love needed to be earned. So to be loved by him, we had to be worthy of that love, and often that meant going through pain.
Often that meant earning that love by going through pain.
Yeah.
Like physical pain.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Okay, Dr. Ann Burgess is here. Our best friend in the world, Dr. Ann Burgess.
So you and I have spent the last 2 weeks trying to figure out, because she does her interview for this in the exact same room that she did her interview for Mastermind, which, fam, if you're not on the Patreon, we covered a whole episode called Mastermind, which is 3 episodes about this woman who helped create profiling with John Douglas.
Yeah, she came in and just turned the FBI around. She's very survivor and victim focused. We would not be where we are today if not for Dr. Ann Burgess.
She's very
amazing.
humble. She's incredible.
And she talks a lot about this case in the 3rd episode of Mastermind, so we knew she was coming.
Yeah.
And she's one of the experts for the defense. And what we talked about in Mastermind is all the men at the FBI were like, what? Like someone could be wrongfully convicted?
Right.
Oh my God, you're going to talk to survivors? Oh my God. So that we knew she was coming.
Yes. Once again, interviewed in the exact same room for here and Mastermind. We're like, how did they coordinate
different
that?
Outfits, different chairs.
I know.
They switched out the chairs, or is it? I think it's some gorgeous library at her university, and she's in a different room for both of them. But anyway, so and again, if you listen to Mastermind, she talks about this drawing technique she uses. So she does it not just with children like Opal. Remember, I can't even talk about Opal without crying. But we talked a lot. She used this technique in a brilliant, pioneering way. Everything she does is brilliant and pioneering.
Yeah.
But with Opal in Mastermind. But she did this technique with Eric because it helps you when you're drawing, you can kind of feel a little disconnected, but also connected to what you're doing.
It's a non-leading way of getting some information. That's what I did with Eric. I said, let's start with that week before. It was a mini Rorschach, I guess you could say, to have him draw it out. And I think it was helpful for him to be able to put it on paper.
They call it a non-leading way to get answers, which is like so important.
And so we're seeing this art, and they mention it in Mastermind, but we don't see it as much as we do here.
Yeah.
And she explains that, like all of the drawings, most of them took place in the bedroom, which is a little unusual in her line of work. And remember, Dr. Ann Burgess started in the 70s, early 80s. She's been doing this for several years now, and she's been developing this new way. So she's using this with the Menendez brothers. And Lyle and Eric were writing things down. Everything is very chaotic in the photos. Jose Menendez is much, much bigger than them.
Yeah, it's like the bed is on fire. These are drawings, not photos.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, something is very wrong in this family. It's very clear. The writing's on the wall, no pun intended.
Because she goes to Leslie Abramson and she's like, this is not about money. There's something very, very wrong in this family.
And remember, it's like Dr. Vickery and Dr. Burgess, and these brothers have been through hell and back, not just in their home, but with people who were, quote, supposed to help them.
Yes.
So it took months and months and months, but slowly but surely, with patience and warmth and empathy, Dr. Vickery and Dr. Burgess get the brothers to trust them and open up and start telling their story. And they made these boys feel safe, and they were patient and understanding. And then the truth finally comes out.
Yeah. So September 11th, 1993, it's trial day 37. Lyle is on the stand, and he did not want to testify. Jill Lansing, she really doesn't get as much focus in these because she's not as bombastic as Leslie Abramson. But Lyle describes her as
Jill Lansing was not the most prominent defense attorney in Los Angeles. She turned out to be remarkably skillful. Very graceful, very honest. Everything you don't usually find in attorneys. She was perfect for this case. She cared.
She's a really good advocate for Lyle, and she gets him to testify. And I loved what he said about how, she didn't want him to sound rehearsed, so she didn't tell him the questions ahead of time.
Which
could have gone another way.
And I feel complicated about it because it's like they have a lifetime of trauma and abuse, and they're walking into it again with doing this on a world stage.
Yes.
And I wonder, we're all learning here how to talk about this in this moment. I understand. But there was a moment where I was like, ooh, that could maybe not go well if Lyle is not expecting. But I guess we're saving his life here.
Yeah, because the thing about it is no matter what you think about this case, when you watch the testimony of Lyle and Eric, it is what is happening to them physically is literally not a thing you can make up. You cannot act that. And that's my question. If I was ever to meet Pam, that's my question. Let's watch the testimony together, and you tell me how you think that Lyle Menendez is creating what he's doing with his face and his mind, and is still able to answer questions. The shame that is coming out of his body, you cannot make that up.
No, you can feel them getting very tense. They want to rip their skin off.
Yes.
They are.
And I'm sorry,
tortured.
Pam. That's really where you lose me. Is if you watch this testimony and you don't believe them, you kind of suck.
If your job back in 1993, win this case no matter what, and you had to get yourself in a headspace where you had to believe they were full of shit.
Yes.
That's your prerogative. That's your job, whatever. But you're going to tell me now in 2024 that you still think that they're full of shit after everything we know, everything that's come out. Even before this documentary, there was other things that came out about Jose Menendez, and also just about stigma and abuse and torture and sexual assault. I just don't understand how you're going to sit here and be so smug about it. Because she's also not saying, look, in my heart of hearts, I know we disagree, but this is how I believe. Wait, she hasn't even gotten started yet, dear listener, about how smug she is. So, that's what gets me.
Yeah, and especially because
it's we're all idiots for believing them.
It's also because the abuse is just it really serves only to tell us their life experience.
Right.
You know what I mean? Also, at the end of the day, Pam, you got him. You got him.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I know.
So just say something to the effect of if it did happen, then I'm really sorry for that, or whatever.
And what does it matter now? You're still keeping score about your fucking cases.
I know.
Be a human being.
I know, especially when you won. I know.
God.
So,
be a human.
We get the testimony from Lyle, and it is so brutal and compelling. You cannot take your eyes away. He's talking about the abuse, the rape, the bleeding. He's talking about the pain. He says that when he told his mom, she told him to stop.
Did you tell your mom?
I told her, and he keeps touching me.
What did your mom say? She told me to stop it and that I was exaggerating. And that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong. And she told me that he loved me.
The dad had to punish him when he was bad and that the dad loved him.
Your father loves you, but when things go wrong, you need to be punished.
Yeah.
Their mother is saying this, who was also abused, by the way. But your son, your 6-year-old son comes to you and tells you what his father is doing, and you say, you knock it off.
You knock it off. I know.
I mean,
I
it's
know.
disgusting.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. And so, but Lyle also says on the stand, again, the things you learn from the cycle of abuse, they learn to be mean.
Yes.
But they also learned in their way, in their developing minds when they're 6 and 7 and 8 years old, that this is what love is.
Right.
Because they were told by both of their parents that this is what love is.
Yes.
And they didn't have anyone to say, is this what love is? No, it's not what love is.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So Lyle says that he, quote, played with Eric in the same way because that's what he learned from his father.
Yes.
And he's on the stand and he's a total wreck and he's Lyle apologizes to Eric from the stand.
And Eric says now, that was such a powerful moment because he had never said he was sorry before.
And it's to your point before, not just how they're acting on the stand, but remember, they're both Eric is at the table when Lyle's on the stand and vice versa. So they're also reacting and learning things in real time about each other's experience.
Yes.
And that you also how do you sit there?
I know. And say they're lying. Well, now we get to Hazel, the juror, and she's like, we were all sobbing. And she says, I thought either he's the best actor I've seen in my life or he's telling the absolute truth.
And Pamela, the prosecutor, goes, oh, after that testimony, I went, oh, shit, because, it's pretty good.
Yep.
Pretty good acting.
Yep. And I want to say again, you can agree that the abuse happened and that it was horrendous and that they still shouldn't have killed their parents. I think that's what Eric thinks now because he says almost as much sort of towards the end of this thing. You can tell me that you think they are where they should be based on what they did. But I cannot tolerate somebody telling me that you think they're lying about the abuse.
Right. Because now Eric testifies and both of the brothers confirm that the abuse started at 6 years old.
He does not know what the word idiosyncrasies means. Did you see this? Where
No.
Leslie asked him.
Are you aware of the idiosyncrasies of that microphone? If you get too close, it pops. You know that?
Yes.
If you get too far away, we don't hear you.
That's right.
Okay.
And he looks at her like he does not know what that word means.
Oh my God.
He's so scared. He was not expecting that
You throw
question.
a word out like that when you're about to go. I would be like, what?
Well,
my brain is
I know.
Not.
Leslie asks him on the stand what he thinks was the inciting moment for them shooting their parents. Go watch this moment. If you haven't seen this, go watch it. Because the way that Eric cannot say the words. He's trying to say that he told Lyle that his father had been raping him. And the way that Eric leans in, leans back, leans in, leans back. You can see I've seen a person go through this almost exact thing, in front of me when they were acknowledging that something like this had happened to them. And it was so reminiscent of the person literally not being able to make themselves say the word. Yeah. That is so real, I think, of a lived experience of a survivor. If you go watch that moment and tell me that you think the abuse didn't happen, and then never talk to me again.
Yeah. So what we're learning in both of their testimonies is that the thing, and this again leads to how evil Jose was and the cycle of abuse and how the layers psychologically too.
Yeah.
The abuse was when he was nice to them. And it's so Jesus Christ, when they said no, he threatened them. When they didn't say no, he was nice.
And also, Leslie asks Eric, did you want the abuse to stop? And he says no.
Because he was so mean in the world to everyone. And like we were saying earlier, you never knew who was going to be the target. Everyone was walking on eggshells. And if this is a way to get affection from him, they were going to take it.
Of course.
It's all they knew. And also they were being threatened.
Yes. One time, Eric says no to his dad. He comes back with a knife.
And when he came back with the knife, what did he do with it, if anything?
He put it on my neck, put his hand on my head, and put the knife on my neck.
Did he threaten you with it?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said I should kill you, and next time I will.
I should kill you, and next time I will.
How do you reconcile this on a regular basis starting at 6 years old? Explain it to me, Pam.
Right.
Of course, their only recourse is to fucking kill them.
Right. Yes.
Really? How
Yes.
lonely
Well,
and scary it is in that house of horrors that your father's doing this to you and your mother doesn't give a shit and it's your fault. Oh, I'd kill them too.
And people keep saying, why didn't you leave? And I've never heard Eric articulate it so well until this documentary. He's saying we were groomed. We were groomed to know that we could never leave. If we left, he would kill us.
Right. And again, Beverly Hills, remember? He's an executive of RCA. He's a movie executive. He knows OJ. Like, you have to put yourselves in their position. They are helpless children.
Yes.
Even, no matter what tax bracket they're in, they were helpless kids. But then Jose Menudo, he came from this royalty and like, come on.
It's also, the grooming is such an important thing to remember.
Yes.
From the time you're 6 years old, you leave me, I'll kill you. You tell anyone, I'll kill you.
And this is when I'm nice to you.
Yes.
This is what love is.
Yes, exactly.
And all they wanted, and he made it so that all they wanted was their father's love, and this is how you get it.
Yes.
Are you kidding? Pam, it's pretty fucking cut and dry. I'm not making a joke here. Like, really, use your mind.
And we're back to the trial, and we're back to the cousin being on the stand, and she testifies that when Lyle was 8, they were all playing together, and Lyle told her about the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes and tells Kitty. Kitty doesn't believe her, and then, like, Kitty comes and drags Lyle out of the room, and then the cousin is like, and then no one ever talked about it ever again, so I must have been wrong.
Because they can't ruin the reputation. They can't ruin.
Right.
And Kitty was abused, but she was also complicit in this.
Right, but the point is, they were telling people when they were younger.
And as the brothers and family members are testifying, it's all over Saturday Night Live. It's all over the late night shows. Sandra Bernhard, those two arrogant brothers are going to fry. I don't buy it. Please, the audience is erupting.
I know.
This SNL sketch.
I walked past her on the stairs to my gym the other day, and I almost yelled at her about it.
Oh, my God.
Can you imagine?
Don't yell at people on the street.
And
but
don't
oh
yell
my
at
God.
Sandra Bernhard. I'm sure she's on our side. I'm sure Sandra Bernhard's on the right side of history.
And it's an interesting thing to think about. I'm sure if that were me, there wouldn't be a day that went by where I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I said that. And I'm sure she's saying that. But like, remember everyone, like SNL and Sandra Bernhard and Jay Leno and everyone, you were doing it to those boys
and
too.
to John Malkovich.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like that SNL sketch when they're because what the sketch is, and it's like they are fake, quote, fake crying on the stand.
Yes.
It is unconscionable. So even if they were actually lying, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, to make jokes about this at all
I know.
is disgusting. And everyone thought it was the funniest thing they've ever heard.
Well, I mean, especially because like how disrespectful that would have been even if you thought they were lying for people who were actual survivors of abuse. And it goes to show that people did not believe that boys could be abused by their father. It wasn't offensive, says the people making the jokes, because this is not a thing that ever happens.
And it was a way, it was a way to have distance and make it, it's not a real thing.
Right.
And it was a real way. It was a lot of people really telling on themselves.
Yes.
And how they think and feel, for sure. For sure.
So we jump to August 13th, 1989. It's 7 days before the murders. And this is where we get the story about why they did it.
Yeah.
So Eric was supposed to go to Stanford. And for Eric, that was everything because he knew he would get away from the raping by his father.
Now, Lyle was off in Princeton in New Jersey.
Yep. And Eric was living for this, living for getting out of the house, living for going to Stanford.
The younger brother was so at the end of his rope that he was thinking about killing himself because he didn't want to endure the rapes of his father anymore. And he had a hope that if he went to Stanford, that maybe he would have some distance between the father. But the father told him, "You're not going to Stanford, you're going to UCLA, and you're going to be living here."
So Lyle was allowed to go away to Princeton, and the father wanted Eric to be home.
Right. So Eric says he was suicidal over this. He said he broke down and told Lyle because that was his last hope. All he could do was go to his brother. Mm-hmm. And so Lyle on the stand is saying that Eric told him about the abuse and he was trying to think of what he could do. So he went and confronted the father. And this is where Lyle says to the dad, "You're never going to touch my brother again. Yeah. I will expose you. I will tell the family. I will tell your work. I will tell everybody." And the dad says, "You listen to me. What I do with my son is none of your business. And we'll pretend this conversation never happened."
But it happened to Lyle too.
Yes.
It's this, again, this layers and the onion of like, no, the brothers are talking about what happened to them.
Yes.
The life they've been living this whole time and confronting their father about it. And so that fact that the father can almost disassociate what I do with my son, you did it to the son who's threatening you.
Exactly.
Like the way these people can just separate their evil acts to make in that moment be like, you can't tell me what to do, but you did it to him.
Right. And it's like, so in that moment when the dad didn't back down, that's when like Lyle realizes like, oh shit, this is it. He's been telling us all of our lives lives. If we ever say no, if we ever threaten to go to anybody, they're going to kill. Like, this is it. Today's the day. We are going to die today.
Right. And their life flashes before their eyes of all of the abuse, all of the threats the father made, all of the threats their mother made when she was writing those notes and threatening to kill the whole family and not believing them. Like, you get in that moment and it's like your world closes in and you're like, I'm trapped.
Right.
Like, they're going to, and now that I made this threat that I'm going to destroy them, we're done. They're going to kill us.
And that's when they decide they're going to go to San Diego and buy the guns.
Because they have been told that they were going to be killed by their parents many times over.
Kill or be killed.
That's it.
Right.
Like, but just think about, I can't imagine how lonely it is. Like, the mother doing nothing, gaslighting herself, gaslighting them.
According to Lyle, in this time, Kitty tells Lyle, you think I'm stupid? Of course I know what's going on.
That's it.
Right.
And then you think of all the times she wrote that down, all the times she threatened to poison herself and us. It's like, they're working together?
Right.
Oh my God, they're working together. This is it. And now they're going to be exposed. It's done. It's done.
So August 20th, 1989, it's the night of the murders. The brothers go to tell the mother that they're leaving. And Jose comes in, tells Eric to go up to his room. You guys are not going anywhere.
Which is like, just fucking say it out loud.
I know. Go to your room and wait for me.
Oh my God, he's about to go to college.
Yeah. So we learned Jose leaves this confrontation, goes into the den. Lyle is thinking,
I thought they were going ahead with their plan to kill us. I ran upstairs to tell my brother that it was happening now. We had the ammunition, and we were just loading as fast as possible. We just burst through the doors. I started firing.
They run back down to the den, burst into the doors, and start shooting.
Mm-hmm. And after it happens, they explain that they're like shocked and stunned. They are both screaming. The brothers are both screaming. And that's when they go to the movies because they wanted to buy tickets for an alibi.
Yeah, they get rid of the guns. Now, I've always wanted to know what happened to the guns.
Where'd the guns go?
So they took the guns up to Mulholland Drive and pulled over somewhere, and like just off the road, they buried them, they say, under like some brush. So like, did somebody find them? Somebody knows. Somebody knows what happened to the guns.
Oh my God.
But like, we don't know. We'll never know what happened to the guns.
So they get rid of the guns, bury them.
Yeah.
Go back to the house, call 911. And here we are.
Yeah.
So then we see it like, headline splashes across the screen. The defense rests after 56 witnesses. And I'm like, wow, it's a lot of people talking about the same horrible abuse. It's a lot of people who didn't have a single good thing to say about their father. 56 witnesses. Remember that because we'll get back to it in a second.
Yeah, because now we learn about imperfect self-defense.
Well, as Stanley, the public defender, says, imperfect defense, which I love, but I love that was in my brain for like the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I've been doing these notes. Patrick, perfect defense. Because what he explains, Stanley, he says the normal definition of defense means that the defendants believe they were about to be assaulted in a serious manner and they respond in the moment in order to protect themselves.
You think your life is at risk in the moment and so you kill or be killed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, imperfect self-defense.
Imperfect self-defense. The defendants honestly believe they were in danger, but a reasonable person just pulled off the streets. Looking at it as if it was a motion picture would have said, well, that's not reasonable. They're not really in danger at this moment.
In general, it's still kill or be killed. They're still in fear for their lives.
Yes.
And this is the only way out of a situation. Think of your domestic violence situations and things of that nature.
But like it strikes me, and maybe I'm wrong, but like imperfect self-defense still means you're getting manslaughter. Like in actual self-defense, you can get off if your life was in danger and it was kill or be killed. With imperfect self-defense, you're still going to jail.
Because I think it's the premeditation.
But like this is the shit we have to fix. And I've said this a million times. If somebody tells you over and over and over again that they're going to kill you, and then you take the moment you have to do whatever you have to do to get out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, this isn't just someone saying, I'm going to kill. This is a lifetime of abuse.
I mean, and once again, I want to say to the people who are saying, but they were adults, why didn't they just leave? Remember, they've been groomed all their lives. Where are they going to go? They have no money. They are going to be completely cut off the second they walk out the front door. Eric is chained to this house to be there.
To be abused.
To be abused by the dad.
And Lyle, even though he was allowed to leave because he like aged out, honestly.
Yeah, truly.
Like it's still.
Like a member of Menudo.
What I'm saying.
I mean that. I'm not making a joke.
That's why I said aged out. Like that.
That's why they replaced them at 15.
That was a thing. That's a real thing. Look up the Menudo story. It's sick. But Lyle, but was also chained. Because then again, like if the family reputation, like Jose Menendez had the power to destroy them in every sense of the word. Their reputation, their soul, their spirit, everything.
And the only thing that they had on him was the truth, you know?
Right. Which is the most dangerous thing of all.
Exactly.
The most dangerous thing of all. Like if a person doesn't want it out there, it's the most powerful weapon you have is the truth. So if the jury believes that imperfect self-defense is the case here, the charge goes down to voluntary manslaughter.
But there's no chance of getting off. That's what makes me crazy. Maybe it's just limited to this case. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. But like in this instance, if they get imperfect self-defense, they are still going to jail for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's crazy.
It's crazy.
So now, based on what was presented at trial, all 56 witnesses, like, I don't understand how you can see Eric and Lyle and hear about what happened in that house. I don't get it. I never will.
This is when Pam looks into the camera and says,
I'm telling you now, that whole defense was fabricated. And it was done artfully, but it was fabricated. And if I were an immoral person, I would have fabricated it much the same way.
Pam.
Fuck you, Pam.
See? That's what I said at the beginning.
I know. I know. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling like I'm not defending her, but I just want to understand her. But I'm sorry, but like the abuse is real, Pam. The abuse is real. You can tell me they still shouldn't have killed their parents. I can have that conversation, but the abuse is real.
That's what I mean. She's not even admitting the facts that we know are the truth. And I know that that's the truth, that they were abused. I know that for a fact.
For sure.
I believe that. So December 8th, 1993, closing arguments. The prosecution, the same old thing. They were rich. They could have left at any time. But what they are saying in their closing arguments is that these people aren't on trial for being bad parents. Eric and Lyle are murderers. End of story. That's why we're here. We're not really here to debate anything else. Are Eric and Lyle murderers? Yes or no? And this is when Eric and Lyle are like, hi, we were groomed.
Right.
Like,
yes.
Have you listened to anything Dr. Ann Burgess has been saying? Like, we couldn't leave. They controlled everything. He was rich and powerful.
Yes.
We were only rich because of him. We had no power.
Yeah.
We were groomed. And the defense is going for manslaughter because, yes, the brothers killed their parents, and that would get like a reduced sentence of like 10 years.
Yes. And so it goes to the jury, and we're back with Hazel, my favorite juror. I love her. And she's saying that her worst fear came true when they asked for a show of hands. I've been on a jury. Like, it is, one of the reasons I love Hazel is because she takes the responsibility really seriously.
Yeah, as we all should.
She's, taking it really seriously, paying really close attention, but she says,
my worst fear came to pass when we made the mistake of taking a show of hands. All of the men raised their hands in favor of first-degree murder, and none of the women raised their hands. So I knew that we had a battle on our hands, a battle of the sexes.
None of the men can imagine a world where a man would actually sexually abuse his male child.
Right. They didn't want to think about it.
They think it's a lie.
They don't want to picture it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. Yeah, the men, of course, that train's never fucking late.
Right.
They're ruining everything.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes I look at Fiona outside when it's like just some big, I don't know, some man making a lot of noise. She just looks up at me and I look at her and I'm like, men, let's go home. Loud men being with their stupid motorcycle. She looks up at me like, girl. And I'm like, girl.
I know.
Like,
I know.
Please, you have a lot to learn, little one. So the jury deliberates for a month.
Yeah, that's wild.
A month of all the women trying to explain the truth to the men and the men not refusing to hear it. How exhausting. Sounds like a nightmare.
A month.
So by January 28th, 1994, it's verdict day and they're deadlocked.
Because
the men wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
That's exhausting.
I mean, it's fucking exhausting. They declare a mistrial, and Pam makes it about her. She's like, I didn't win, but I didn't lose in the sense that they didn't go home.
And now the state wants to try the case again, and Pam, the prosecutor, is ousted from the case. But as she shifts the narrative, I'd rather eat glass for a year than try that case again. They didn't want me. I didn't want them. Okay, fuck off, Pam. Bye.
Bye.
So here's what happens, though, because we're in 1994. So January 1994 is the Menendez trial. In June of 1994, O.J. Simpson is arrested.
O.J. suddenly, took over all of the media. O.J. was Menendez on steroids.
I always say we did the warm-up trial for the O.J. Simpson spectacle.
O.J. today, O.J.
I think the general public had kind of forgotten about Eric and Lyle Menendez. They were much more enthralled by the O.J. Simpson case at that point.
Can I tell you what a wild time it was to be alive during this? I mean, you were alive too, but I was right at that age where this kind of shit was piquing my attention. So I remember the Menendez thing happening. And then I remember walking in my house one day. Everyone in my family is glued to the TV watching the O.J. Bronco chase.
Do you remember people making fun of the Menendez brothers, like in the world, like that SNL stuff. Like, what was
do.
that?
I mean, I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even when we started doing our coverage of the Eric thing on Patreon years ago, I feel like even we were kind of like, what's going on here? And then at the end of the first episode, we're like, wait a second.
I didn't know a lot about it.
Because it was long before this TikTok revolution. So I do think that we went into the original Menendez coverage years and years ago being like, they're where they should be. And after one episode, we're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Because I remember that was the first
abuse
time.
is just so clear.
That was the first time I rewatched them on the stand. And like watching it as a, 40-year-old adult, I was like, this is so obvious that this is true.
The thing, my biggest connection to it, I think, was like, those brothers who killed their parents were on that basketball card.
Which I have in my office. Somebody sent that to me.
You. But it was like, these rich kids, like, it's not, I just knew,
yes,
I didn't think they were serial killers, but I didn't know, of course, these
scary, awful rich kids. And like the shift in the narrative has really just happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
So Eric and OJ are at the same county jail, quote, in the celebrity section.
Because once again, the mistrial was declared at the end of January 1994. OJ was arrested in June 1994.
Right. So they like played catch with OJ growing up. It's wild. It's insane. Like one of them should be in there and one of them should not be.
Meanwhile, Lyle is on a different floor and bored, so he's just getting on the phone talking to people all the time.
Okay.
He talks to this woman, Norma Novelli, who starts...
This is a bad move, Lyle. I'm sorry. Like, look,
I know.
My brain is scattered today, and
Yes.
I didn't go through anything that they went through, so like, I get it, but Lyle, I think he would admit this was a bad move.
Yeah, I mean, she starts recording the calls without his knowledge. She writes a whole book about their like 2.5 year like friendships.
Well, because on the tapes, Lyle is talking about like lying.
Because I'm going to have to make something up to show this guy's motive, because sometimes people can lie too convincingly.
Oh, sure. So you're going to be just as convincing.
Oh, yeah, which is no problem for me. I mean, I can do that.
But these tapes never saw the light of day, and Norma was like weird and inappropriate. We get like this round robin of people being like, he's in his 20s, she's in her 50s.
Mm-hmm.
She was like really kind of being like a star fucker, for lack of a better term. And like once she learned that he wasn't into her, then she was like, well, I'm going to release all these tapes. And he was like, wait, what tapes?
What tapes? Like fucked by the tapes yet again.
Like but regardless, like the tapes were made public, and Lyle did, like, he said bad shit in them, and it was not good for the case. There's no other way to say it. It was like talking to this woman was a bad idea.
No, and then like, the other thing that's not good for the case is in October where OJ is found not guilty, and Leslie Abramson is on Larry King saying this is going to be bad for the boys and everybody else. It's going to be payback time.
Because it's going to be backlash for high-profile defendants.
Yes, and the LA DA, the LA like court system has to show that it can work.
Again. With Rodney King, and then and it's the same judge. It's like, my God.
I know.
It's like, or we could just get justice for the sake of getting justice instead of like making a point. Do you know what I mean? Like, what about that?
Yeah, what about that?
And it's so again, 8 days after the acquittal, the second trial starts, and it's that same judge, the judge who was, quote, humiliated by the hung jury, plus he's still not over the Rodney King case.
Right.
And someone says he was determined to get a conviction. This judge, and I will say it again later when the time comes, set these guys up.
100%.
Judge Stanley Weisberg this time says he will limit the number of experts and witnesses called to support the so-called abuse excuse defense.
The judge said, well, Eric and Lyle are not women, so the battered women syndrome doesn't apply. So all of that trauma, it's not relevant and is not allowed to the second trial.
We can't have 57 people saying the exact same thing about Jose Menendez. We can't have that anymore. Because if we do that, he won't get the conviction he wants.
And we watched Leslie learn this in real time. She goes bananas on the judge in the courtroom. She goes, it's one thing to have a bias. It's another thing to let your bias affect your judicial decisions in the courtroom.
And as if it can't get any worse, one of the reasons the abuse isn't allowed is because the brothers aren't women. So the abuse is, quote, not relevant.
Yes.
Now, I love how our abuse is only relevant when it's convenient.
100%.
Like,
yes.
Suddenly it's only real when it happens to women. Like, but only in theory, right?
It's only relevant to discount somebody else's abuse.
Right, so only in theory.
Yeah,
like, where are these people talking about it when the real abuse is actually happening to us? I'd love to know.
Right.
How dare you not believe the abuse and then only believe it conveniently when it helps you?
Right.
Oh, we're fucking right off. You're fucking right off. That guy should be de-judged or de-benched or whatever the fuck.
Everyone's losing their mind.
Disbarred.
Like, Lyle is so so upset about all of this that he doesn't testify, and it was his test. So, like, remember, in the first trial, they had 57 character witnesses saying, we saw the abuse, Jose is a monster, the cousin saying, he told me about the abuse when he was 8.
The sexual abuse.
The sexual abuse, this is real. Then we have Lyle and Eric both testifying, breaking down on the stand. There's just no way they could be making it up. Lyle doesn't testify the second time.
And so the second trial was very different. It wasn't televised.
Yes.
Lyle didn't testify. The witnesses of the abuse were not called to testify. Cousin Diane, she's not there anymore.
One of our talking heads says the fact that they didn't let the cousin testify that Lyle told her at 8 years old that the dad was molesting him, that just can't be kept out.
It can't
but
be.
It was.
It was. And on top of that,
when the judge decided what evidence we could consider, we were given either first-degree murder as an option or no crime whatsoever. We voted unanimously to convict.
so it was either murder or nothing.
Or they walk out today, and they have one of the jurors from that trial here, and he's like, with only those two options, we had no choice but to
when
convict
the brothers had admitted that they killed them.
that they did it.
But there's no explanation why.
Right.
The jurors are kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
So the judge set them up.
So
is
the
what I'm
judge
saying.
sets them up to get a conviction, which is just like, that is just...
It's how, like, we talk about this about the shitty cops, protect and serve, right?
Yeah.
Why did you show up to work today then?
Exactly.
Why are you a judge? You know how much work it takes to be a judge? Everything you have to, like, don't you have to fucking stand for something too?
And imagine being the judge that did do that. Imagine him being like, okay, that OJ thing was really bad. That Rodney King thing was really bad. Both are on the wrong side of history. But you know what? I heard what I heard in that 9-month trial. And that was a hung jury is like, at worst, the hung jury is correct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And isn't that kind of on you?
Right.
Judge, you're running this whole show, aren't you?
Stand in your truth, Judge. Like, if we're doing this, let all of the testimony be heard and then let a jury of their peers decide their fate.
No, because it's about numbers. It's about my reputation. It's about optics. It's horrifying.
Because imagine if he had stood in that position for all of these decades, the hero that guy would be.
Yeah, it's completely, it's not just, I feel like unethical is too light of a word.
Yeah.
Because it's so much more than that.
Because at the end of the day, if you let all of that evidence come in, right, and you get another hung jury, then that's just what it is. It's too complicated for people to be able to parse it out, right? A, or B, they get convicted because people legitimately believe the abuse, but also think that they shouldn't have murdered their parents. I am fine with either of those outcomes. You know what I mean?
You got to tell the whole story, though.
You gotta tell the whole fucking story.
You can't purposely silence 57, 8, 9 people.
Yeah.
I'm going to count the Menendez brothers as part of the people silenced.
Yes.
You can't silence them for your own agenda.
Right.
That is disgusting.
Disgusting.
That's not why you're here.
And these are real lives that are like hanging in the balance.
Right?
here.
And like, what did it do for you, guy?
Right.
What's your fucking name again? Some
Right.
idiot doofus? Like,
Right.
oh, really? Are you some revered guy? Like, what
Right.
did it do for you?
Right.
It just made you more comfortable to go to like shitty cocktail parties?
Gil Grassetti's
You know
Christmas
what I
party?
mean?
Right,
For a couple
exactly.
of years, you're the guy who convicted the Menendez brothers.
Right, yeah.
And like, how's that going for you now, buddy?
I know. So Lyle and Eric get consecutive life sentences without parole.
Yeah.
They do that Barbara Walters interview, which they say they only did as like a plea for them to stay together. Eric is looking into the camera being like, everything in the world has been taken from me. I have nothing left but my brother. Like, can we please like stay in the same penitentiary?
And after 6 years, they're separated, which is heartbreaking for them.
Heartbreaking.
At that point, when they're separated, they're just like fucking great. Like they're in prison they think they're in prison forever.
Yeah.
They were abused their entire lives. They'll never see each other again. And so like they do what they can do in prison. They go to school. They find solace in art. Like art. Like shout out to Valentino Dixon. Eric is making like gorgeous art.
Yes.
They focus on their spirituality. And by 2018, eventually the brothers are reunited and they're in the same facility for the first time since 1996.
Yeah.
When suddenly this prayer of being able to see my brother again was being answered. The joy of seeing him again, of being able to wrap my arms around him and give him a hug was overwhelming. It was just happiness.
And they say it's healing. They talk every day. And they're saying that, like, it is amazing that the world is finally open to having the conversation about what actually happened to us.
Right, because as the years are going by, it's like 2011 and Oprah does this, what is described as a groundbreaking show with 200 men who were abused, holding photos of themselves at the age when it first happened.
I remember that episode.
Really?
Like,
Oh
holy
my
shit.
God.
Yeah.
And now they don't mention it here, but this is why Dr. Ann Burgess worked on this case. Like she knew it was so highly publicized. She wanted to destigmatize the issue. That's why she was a part of this case, which
Yeah.
we dive into more in Mastermind because we haven't seen Dr. Ann Burgess in this documentary in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But the brothers, they're saying these really moving things about all the letters they got, about
Yes.
people thanking them for their honesty and their vulnerability. And it's when you're the Menendez brothers and you have these assholes on Saturday Night Live and Jay Leno making fun of you.
Yeah.
And then the letters start pouring in.
Well, and also Lyle is saying that other prisoners started to come to him with their stories. He says he ends up devoting his life in prison to sex abuse survivor issues.
Yeah.
And
now, as social media is growing,
Yeah.
more people are learning about the case and what actually happened. And now there's been this movement. If the trial happened today, there's no way it would go down the
No,
same
and
way.
it's all over TikTok. And Pam says, she looks into the camera and says, the only reason we're even doing this special is because of TikTok, to free the Menendez.
There's a stupid movement to free the Menendez, which is my jaw was on the ground.
I know. And she said, if that's how we're going to try cases now, why don't we just have a poll? We'll present the facts. Everyone gets to vote on TikTok, and then we decide who gets to go home.
She goes, your beliefs are not facts. They're just beliefs. And I'm like, exactly.
Right.
Pam, you dummy, you're proving our point.
Right.
The
Right.
facts
Right.
are the facts, and the judge would let 57 people say the facts. What are you
Exactly.
talking? What are you saying to
That's
me, Pam?
exactly it. That's exactly it.
You're proving our point, dummy.
And then Pam looks into the camera and says,
And by the way, all you TikTok people, I'm armed. We got guns all over the house, so don't mess with me.
don't mess with me.
Ma'am, this is a Wendy's. Are you all right? Also, is this
I hope
you?
she plays Hot to Go.
Is this you reacting to facts again? Because this
I know.
feels an awful lot about feelings, girl.
I know.
This looks a lot like
Yeah,
feelings to me,
I know.
but you're going to scream about facts and threaten? That's the thing. She starts with thinking we're all idiots for being empathetic or understanding or believing these brothers. And then she ends with downright a threat?
A threat to And then Eric says, this really kind of caught me off guard. He says, I do worry that this, based on all of the new pop culture focus on the case, Eric says, I do worry that the seriousness of my crime not be minimized or diminished.
Yeah.
Eric, I mean, that's a big thing for him to say.
Yeah. And he feels so much guilt. He says every aspect of this tragedy is my fault. Because he says, this all happened because of me. I told my brother, I told Dr. Oziel, and I'm like, Eric, no.
I know.
No.
Yeah, that's the work that Eric has to do. That this happened because the abuse happened to him.
Yeah.
You know?
So Leslie Abramson, Jill Lansing, and Dr. Oziel declined to be interviewed for this documentary.
Yeah. Via email, Leslie said, 30 years is a long time. I'd like to leave the past in the past. No amount of media nor teenage petitions will alter the fate of these clients. Only courts can do that, and they have ruled. And I don't like that, Leslie.
I don't like the tone.
Because, it's also saying, anything can happen, and social movements are really fucking powerful.
Yes.
And work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so she had asked one of I think it was Dr. Vickery to alter his notes. There's a lot of drama with her.
We go over it in the other doc that we did on Patreon where she really fucks up and she gets caught in real time in court having doctored notes.
Yeah.
Leslie Abramson, in real time, she's been screaming at this judge for 3 years and finally he has grounds to really let her have it.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's really wild.
I'm not here to defend any misconduct in any way. I just think that sort of speaks to the desperation of what these people were up against. But I don't condone it. Or,
That's not okay, Leslie. We don't do that. Especially when you have the truth on your side.
But I think she was just feeling oh my God, this is all over Saturday Night Live. No one's going to believe these kids. How do I make them believe them?
Oh God.
But so we end in May 2023. Eric and Lyle filed a habeas petition seeking to vacate their murder convictions in light of new evidence. And on October 3rd, this is how fast documentaries are being made.
Because
everyone.
we are
still
recording
October.
this. It's still October.
On October 3rd, 2024, Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon. I'm saying that name wrong.
No, that's exactly right.
Is it?
It has to be.
I think it's Gascon. I'm sorry.
The nuances of your O really suck. I hope you feel really bad about it.
But sometimes that's important for people. I think it's Gascon. I'm so sorry. But the Los Angeles District Attorney announced that his office is reviewing and will make a decision on whether it warrants a resentencing or trial. And if you or someone you know has experienced sexual abuse, information and resources are available at wannatalkaboutit.com.
Yeah.
Okay. There's fucking breaking news.
Breaking fucking news.
It happened while we were recording. So the timing of this just so happened.
Literally while we were recording this episode.
Yeah. So that LA district attorney who on October 3rd said that they were going to make a review.
Yeah.
So the Los Angeles district attorney has recommended resentencing.
Oh my God.
Who are each serving life in prison without parole. So the quote is, we're going to recommend to the court on Friday that life without the possibility of parole be removed and they would be sentenced for murder, which would be a sentence of 50 years to life. But because of their age, they were both under 26 at the time of the crimes, they would be eligible for parole immediately.
Whoa.
So this is huge.
Oh my God.
And now the final decision has to be made by a judge and the parole board must approve. So there is a hearing on November 26th. But this is like really, this is what people have been fighting for. And this, Leslie Abramson and all these people, this is why these movements are important.
Yes, that's exactly right, Leslie. Never give up, girl.
Like, we have to destigmatize shit. We have to listen to people. We have to believe people.
Yes,
Pam, keep walking. I'm not even talking to you anymore. Right. This is a Wendy's, girl. Calm down.
Oh my God, girl, we did the Menendez
brothers on Netflix,
Wow, what a ride.
This is crazy. So we'll be, go into the Facebook group, I guess, and we're not going to make like a new episode about what happens at the hearing or anything, but we're following the case. I have my Google alerts on, like, holy shit. Think about what this can do for survivors and for stigma and for just what this can do, like, for this high profile case. Like, this is huge. This is huge for like our world. So
yeah, that's it. We're going to leave you with that, fam. We got some hope today.
Okay.
We can't ask for more than that,
you
can you?
know what? Oh, boy. Well, you want to know what we're doing next?
Yeah. What are we doing next?
Jailbreak, Love on the Run.
Oh, my God. This one is insane.
Oh, my God.
It's so wild.
Talk about feelings.
I know.
Talk about feelings.
All right, fam. Stay tuned for the trailer for that. Go join the book club. Get in the Facebook group and join the book club. It's going to be so great.
It's going to be great.
And we love you.
We love you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
You got this older woman who's lonely in the jail, and you got this man.
He was facing a capital murder charge, and she wanted to try to save him.
She trusted him. Vicky, what have you done? Vicky devoted her life to her job. I said, when are you going to retire? And she said, soon. And when I go, I'm going out with a bang. Oh my God, he will kill her.